It was a fog-choked evening in late November when a peculiar letter arrived at our Baker Street lodgings, delivered by a rather breathless footman whose anxious glance suggested the summons might be of no ordinary sort. I remember well how the gas lamps outside flickered weakly through the drifting mist, casting long, wavering shadows along the cobblestone street. The familiar sounds of London, the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages, and the faint tolling of Big Ben seemed muffled beneath the heavy blanket of damp air, as if the city itself held its breath in anticipation. Chapter 01. I was seated by the hearth, nursing a cup of tea, when Holmes, who had been absent-mindedly strumming his violin, suddenly paused mid-note. His keen eyes, always sharp even in repose, flicked toward the door the moment the letter was placed upon the worn oak table with a soft thud. The footman, scarcely able to meet our gaze, murmured, "A letter for Mr. Holmes, sir." From an unusual sender, if I might say. Holmes glanced at the envelope, Pitt's paper, thick, cream-colored, and bearing a peculiar embossed seal of an ancient tree entwined with serpents. Intriguing," he murmured, fingers already deftly breaking the wax. I noted the precision with which he examined the script, his brow furrowing with interest. The letter was penned in an elegant yet hurried hand, signed simply A.E.L. Another cryptic invitation, no doubt. Holmes remarked dryly, "Come, Watson, let us see what new puzzle fate has sent our way." As I settled into my chair opposite him, I felt the familiar thrill of anticipation, tempered by a creeping uncertainty. Holmes's cases, while often intellectually stimulating, were seldom free of danger or moral complexity. Yet tonight, there was something in the letter's tone, a hint of urgency, that unsettled even my usually impassive companion. He read aloud, "Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I write to you with a matter most perplexing and urgent. An event has transpired that defies all rational explanation, and it is only through your unique faculties that the truth may be uncovered. I implore you to come at once to the residence of Lady Evelina Grimshaw at 14 Westcliff Terrace this very evening. Time is of the essence. Yours sincerely, A.E.L." Holmes folded the letter neatly and tapped it against his knee. Lady Evelina Grimshaw, a name that resonates faintly in the corridors of the aristocracy. I cannot recall an immediate scandal or tragedy connected to her family, but names often conceal deeper truths. This A.E.L., a cryptic signature, indeed, adds to the intrigue. Leaned forward, curiosity overcoming my habitual reserve. Do you suppose this matter most perplexing involves some sort of high society scandal? A locked-room mystery, perhaps? Holmes smiled thinly. A locked-room mystery, or something worse. The words defies all rational explanation are rarely chosen lightly. It suggests not merely a crime, but a puzzle wrapped in layers of deceit, and the urgency, theme that implies consequences extending beyond mere intrigue. With a decisive motion, he donned his long coat and adjusted his deerstalker hat. It's a very image of the consulting detective readying for action. "Watson, my dear fellow, I propose we make haste. The night awaits, and I suspect this evening will be one to remember." As we stepped into the gaslit street, the cold air bit through my overcoat, carrying with it the distant echoes of a city alive yet cloaked in mystery. Holmes's stride was purposeful, every step measured and precise, as if he were already calculating the myriad possibilities that awaited us at Westcliff Terrace. The journey through London's labyrinthine streets afforded ample opportunity to observe the city's nocturnal character. The thick fog curled around gas lamps like spectral serpents, and the shadows of passers-by stretched and merged with the darkness. I noted how Holmes's eyes darted from one detail to another, the unevenness of paving stones, the fresh imprint of carriage wheels in the mud, the faint scent of tobacco mingling with the damp air. Each fragment seemed insignificant to an untrained eye. Yet, I trusted Holmes was silently weaving these threads into a tapestry of deduction as we neared Westcliff Terrace, a quiet, tree-lined avenue nestled in one of London's more genteel districts. The atmosphere shifted. The houses here were imposing yet tasteful, their facades adorned with wrought iron railings and window boxes barren from the advancing winter. Yet, beneath the veneer of respectability, lurked an unsettling stillness. At number 14, a grand but somewhat austere townhouse, we were greeted by a footman who appeared on the doorstep within moments of our arrival. His eyes were wide with apprehension and without ceremony. He ushered us inside. The interior was dimly lit, shadows pooling in the corners of the richly furnished parlor. On a marble mantelpiece sat an assortment of curios, an antique clock, a delicate porcelain figurine, and an unopened telegram. The air was heavy with the scent of burning wood and something faintly floral, perhaps a trace of the lady's preferred perfume. Before we could speak, a woman entered the room with a grace that was at once commanding and frail. Lady Evelina Grimshaw was of middle age, her features finely chiseled but etched with worry. Her eyes, a piercing shade of gray, held a mixture of determination and desperation. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, her voice steady despite the tremor I detected beneath. "I am grateful beyond words that you came so promptly. The matter concerns my late husband, Lord Frederick Grimshaw, and events so strange they have left my household in turmoil." Holmes inclined his head. "Madam, you have my full attention. Pray, recount the circumstances." She took a deep breath. "It is now 3 nights past since Lord Grimshaw was found dead in his study, the door locked from within. The circumstances are baffling. No signs of forced entry, no disturbance of the room. The coroner declared it a natural death, yet I cannot believe it." His expression was one of terror, and there are discrepancies in the timeline of events that none in the household can explain. Holmes's gaze sharpened. "Locked room deaths always pique my interest. Tell me who else was present in the house at the time." "Only the household staff and myself, all sworn to secrecy, yet all haunted by unease." Holmes rose, pacing slowly as he absorbed her words. "In the night of the death, were there any visitors? Letters? Phone calls?" She hesitated. "A letter? Yes. Received by Lord Grimshaw that very evening. I have it here." She handed Holmes an envelope, sealed with the same peculiar emblem as the letter that brought us here. Holmes examined it closely. Connection, perhaps, to our earlier correspondence. Intriguing, indeed. I watched as Holmes's eyes flickered with that familiar spark of mind, already racing through permutations of possibilities. Despite the apparent clarity of the case, I sensed he was withholding his deepest insights, drawing us slowly into a web of mystery that promised no simple answers. As the clock chimed the hour, the shadows lengthened and the gas lamps outside sputtered in the encroaching fog. I realized that this was no ordinary investigation. It was a journey into the hidden corners of human nature, a test of observation and reasoning that only Holmes could hope to master. And so, with the evening still young and the puzzle laid before us, we prepared to delve into the enigma that was the death of Lord Frederick Grimshaw, an event that would challenge every assumption, cover secrets long buried, and ultimately reveal truths that defied all rational explanation. The parlor at 14 Westcliff Terrace retained a heavy stillness. As we settled into its plush, high-backed chairs, Lady Evelina Grimshaw, her composure now tempered with an edge of exhaustion, poured tea with deliberate care. The clinking of fine china was the only sound to break the tense silence, an odd contrast to the storm gathering within these walls. Holmes, ever the keen observer, wasted no time. His eyes swept over the room, noting every detail with a meticulous attention I had long admired and sometimes struggled to keep pace with. The heavy velvet curtains were drawn tightly against the night, the ornate fireplace unlit, leaving the chamber cloaked in soft shadows. On the low table between us lay the mysterious letter and an array of papers and photographs, hastily gathered by the lady in the wake of her husband's demise. "Madam," Holmes began, his voice low but commanding, "I would ask you first to recount everything from the moment you received this letter until the discovery of Lord Grimshaw's death. No detail is too trivial, and nothing must be omitted." Lady Evelina nodded, steeling herself. "Very well. On the evening of the 12th, just after dinner, Lord Grimshaw retired to his study, as was his habit. Shortly after, a messenger delivered a letter addressed to him. I was not present at the time, but the footman assured me the letter bore a seal. Matching this one, she indicated the emblem Holmes had inspected, and that my husband appeared visibly disturbed after reading it." Holmes's fingers twitched, betraying his interest. "Did you see the letter afterward?" "No. It was locked away in his desk, and none of the household staff were permitted to see its contents. Lord Grimshaw was a private man, and in the days leading to his death, he grew increasingly secretive. When I inquired, he dismissed my concerns. I exchanged a glance with Holmes, who remained silent, eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Did you observe any unusual behavior from Lord Grimshaw in those final days?" Holmes pressed. Lady Evelina hesitated, then spoke quietly. "He was restless, often pacing the length of the study at hours. His eyes, once steady and confident, seemed clouded with worry. And on the night of his death, he refused to join me for tea, stating he needed to attend to urgent matters." Holmes stood abruptly, approaching the mantelpiece where the unopened telegram still rested. He picked it up, scanning its sparse contents. "A telegram, you say?" "Yes," Lady Evelina replied. "It arrived the morning after Lord Grimshaw's death. The message was brief and cryptic. The past will not stay buried. Meet me at the old chapel on Fleet Street at midnight." Holmes's expression darkened. A summons of some kind, no doubt. "And did anyone else in the household receive communications from unknown sources?" "Not to my knowledge," the lady answered, though there were strange noises in the house whispers. Footsteps, especially near the study. The servants speak of shadows moving when no one is there. I felt a chill creep along my spine. Such tales might easily be dismissed as superstition, yet in the context of Lord Grimshaw's sudden death, they took on a far more sinister hue. Holmes returned the telegram to its place, folding his hands behind his back. "Tell me, madam, about the household staff, their names, their roles, and their recent conduct." She complied without hesitation. "There is Mr. Clark, the butler faithful and discreet, who has served the Grimshaws for over 2 decades. Miss Evelyn, the lady's maid, young and quick-witted. Mr. Harris, the gardener, a stoic man with little to say. And then there's Mrs. Pemberton, the cook, whose temper is as sharp as her knives." Holmes's eyes gleamed. A colorful ensemble. Have any among them exhibited signs of distress or unusual activity? Lady Evelina bit her lip. "Mr. Clark was uneasy the night of Lord Grimshaw's death. He admitted to hearing voices, but refused to specify further. Miss Evelyn vanished for several hours, claiming a sudden illness. Mr. Harris was absent from the grounds at an odd hour, and Mrs. Pemberton was seen near the study door, though she insists she was merely delivering a tray." "Curious," murmured Holmes. "Such conflicting accounts often conceal more than they reveal." I watched as Holmes moved to the window, peering out into the swirling mist. "Tell me, madam, did Lord Grimshaw have any known enemies or adversaries? Business rivals? Political foes?" Lady Evelina shook her head slowly. "None that I know of, at least none he ever mentioned. Lord Grimshaw was a man of considerable influence, but rarely drawn into open conflict. Yet recently, he had grown secretive about certain dealings, refusing to discuss matters even with me. Holmes nodded, steepling his fingers. Secrets breed suspicion. I trust you have not omitted anything from your account. Her eyes met his, steady and resolute. Nothing, Mr. Holmes. I seek only the truth. Very well, he said, turning back to the room. You mentioned the study was locked from within. Was there any indication of how Lord Grimshaw met his end? According to the coroner's report, the cause was natural heart failure, most likely, but the expression on my husband's face was one of sheer terror. I cannot reconcile the peacefulness of such a death with that countenance. Holmes's fingers tapped lightly on the letter before him. Fear can be a potent agent, madam, and sometimes it is fear alone that kills. I was struck by the subtlety of Holmes's remark, for it hinted at something beyond mere physical cause. What unseen dread could have gripped Lord Grimshaw so completely? Did the coroner note any marks or wounds? Holmes inquired. No, Lady Evelina replied. None that the report mentions. Holmes was silent for a moment, eyes fixed on the flickering candlelight. And the servants, are they willing to speak freely with me? Yes, I have granted you full access. Holmes turned to me, a glint of anticipation in his eye. Then, I propose we begin with the study itself. Watson, I would ask you to accompany me. There is much to observe that words alone cannot convey. As we rose, Lady Evelina pressed a small key into Holmes's hand. The study door is locked, but this will grant you entry. The house grew quieter as we ascended the grand staircase, the wooden steps creaking underfoot. I followed Holmes closely, noting how his gaze darted from the intricate molding to the worn carpet runners. We paused before the heavy oak door, its surface marred by faint scratches. The keyhole catching the weak light. Holmes produced the key and, with practiced ease, turned it. The door swung open with a slight groan, revealing a room cloaked in shadow. Inside, tout, the study was a paradox of elegance and neglect. Bookshelves lined the walls, some sagging under the weight of leather-bound tomes, while papers and documents lay scattered across a mahogany desk. A single chair was overturned near the window, and the faint smell of pipe tobacco lingered in the air. Holmes's eyes flickered over the scene, taking in every detail. Observed, Watson, he said quietly. There is a story here, told not in words, but in the silence left behind. I followed his gaze to a small scrap of paper pinned beneath the desk blotter, an address, hastily scrawled with the same serpentine emblem as the letters. Holmes pocketed it without comment. Suddenly, a faint creak from the hallway alerted us. We exchanged a glance and moved swiftly to investigate. At the door stood Mr. Clark, the butler, his expression tight. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I thought, to find you here. There is something you should see. He led us to the servants' quarters, where a crumpled note lay on the floor. Bore a single word: beware. Holmes folded the note carefully, his lips tightening. While puzzle deepens, Watson, this house holds more secrets than even its occupants suspect. As we returned to the parlor, the shadows outside lengthened and the fog thickened, wrapping the world in a cloak of uncertainty. I felt, as I often did in Holmes's presence, that we were only at the beginning of a journey, one that would test our wits, our resolve, and our very understanding of truth. And in that moment, I knew the night's revelations would be stranger, darker, and more dangerous than any I had yet encountered. Chapter 02. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, the London fog clinging stubbornly to the streets and alleys as if reluctant to release its grip on the city. Yet, despite the chill in the air, Holmes was already alert and restless, ready to delve deeper into the mystery that had been laid before us. After a brief but hasty breakfast at our lodgings, we returned to Westcliff Terrace, where Lady Evelina awaited our further inquiries with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Holmes wasted no time. We must examine the study again, Watson, this time with greater scrutiny. It is the crucible of this mystery. His eyes gleamed with that familiar intensity, as if every shadow and detail within that room held a secret waiting to be revealed. Lady Evelina led us through the house to the study once more, her steps quieter now, weighed down by the gravity of recent events. The heavy oak door creaked open, admitting us into the same chamber where Lord Grimshaw had met his end. Holmes's gaze swept over the room anew. But this time his attention was drawn not merely to the large furniture or scattered papers, but two subtle signs others might overlook. "Observe, Watson," he said, kneeling beside the overturned chair. The chair's position, though seemingly random, suggests a sudden disturbance, perhaps a struggle or a hurried movement. I bent closer, noting the faint scuff marks on the polished floorboards and the slight disarray of books on the nearby shelf. One volume lay face down, its pages dog-eared and stained. Holmes gingerly lifted it, revealing the title, "The Secret Societies of London." "A curious choice," he murmured, flipping through the pages. "This may hint at Lord Grimshaw's interests or worries in his final days." As Holmes examined the book, I moved toward the desk, my fingers tracing the carved wood grain. A brass inkwell sat near the edge, its surface smudged with a dark stain. Nearby, a small, unassuming object caught my Aja silver cufflink, engraved with a delicate serpent motif. I pocketed it carefully, aware that such a detail might be significant. Holmes's gaze fell upon my find. "Well observed, Watson. Such a personal item misplaced could indicate a visitor or an internal struggle. We shall inquire accordingly." Turning toward the window, Holmes inspected the heavy velvet curtains, noting faint smudges along the hem. "Something passed this way," he observed, "or someone hastily drew the drapes." I followed his line of sight to the glass itself. Despite the cold, there was no frost or condensation on the pane, suggesting it had been recently wiped. A small smear, nearly invisible, caught the light. Holmes produced his pocket magnifying glass and examined it closely. "A fingerprint?" I ventured. Holmes nodded. "A partial one, though inconclusive in this light. We shall have to see if our friend Inspector Lestrade can provide further assistance." Our inspection was interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Clark, the butler. His presence was solemn, yet there was a flicker of something else, nervousness, or perhaps guilt. "Mr. Holmes," he said, "there is something you should know. Last night, after you left, Miss Evelyn confided in me. She fears for her safety, and has been keeping a journal of strange occurrences in the house." Holmes's interest sharpened. "A journal, you say? We must see it at once." Mr. Clark led us to a small, sparsely furnished room on the second floor, where Miss Evelyn's belongings lay scattered. On a modest writing desk sat a leather-bound notebook, its cover worn but intact. Holmes opened it carefully. The entries were brief, sometimes cryptic, but a pattern emerged: mentions of whispered voices, fleeting shadows, and unexplained noises, particularly near the study and the old chapel on Fleet Street mentioned in the telegram. One passage read, "November 10th, heard muffled footsteps in the corridor at midnight. Tried to follow, but was stopped by Mr. Harris, who seemed agitated." Another stated, "November 11th, found a small serpent-shaped brooch on the garden path. It is not mine. Lady Evelina forbade me from mentioning it." Holmes's eyes flicked up sharply. "This brooch, Watson, may well be a vital clue. The serpent motif is consistent across the letters, the cufflink, and now this." As he spoke, I noticed a faint tremor in Lady Evelina's hands. The weight of secrets, it seemed, pressed heavily upon all present. Holmes closed the journal and regarded us both, Evelyn's fear is not unfounded. Okay. We are dealing with a house steeped in secrets, guarded by silent watchers, and perhaps something more insidious. We returned to the parlor where Lady Evelina awaited. Holmes paced slowly, piecing together the scattered fragments. "Tell me more about this old chapel on Fleet Street," he said. "Is it still in use, lady?" Evelina nodded. "No, it was closed many years ago. Stands abandoned, a ruin hidden among the narrow alleys. Local lore speaks of secret meetings and forbidden rites held there in a bygone era." Holmes smiled faintly, a perfect stage for clandestine affairs. "I intend to visit this chapel tonight." The lady's face paled. "At midnight. Alone?" "Okay. Hardly. Alone," Holmes replied. "Watson and I shall accompany you if you wish." Before we could speak further, a sudden knock echoed from the front door. Mr. Clark opened it to reveal Inspector Lestrade, a familiar figure in Holmes's investigations, his expression grave. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," Lestrade greeted. "I heard of your presence here and thought my assistance might be welcome." Holmes inclined his head. "Spectre, your timing is impeccable. We could use your expertise, particularly in matters of forensics and inquiry." Lestrade nodded, removing his overcoat. "I've brought some specialists to examine the study and to see if we can recover anything overlooked. Also, I have inquiries to make with the household staff." As Lestrade spoke, Holmes turned to me. "Watson, this case will require more than mere observation. We must dig deeper, peel back the layers of appearances to uncover the hidden truths." The afternoon passed in a flurry of questions and careful examinations. The coroner's initial findings were revisited. The fingerprint on the windowpane was documented. The silver cufflink and serpent brooch was sent for analysis. Holmes and I interviewed each member of the household in turn, noting every inconsistency. In subtle hesitation, Mr. Harris, the gardener, was particularly reticent. His answers were clipped, and his eyes darted nervously when questioned about his whereabouts the night of Lord Grimshaw's death. Mrs. Pemberton, good, was brusque but oddly forthcoming, revealing a fleeting glimpse of tension between herself and the other servants. "This house," she muttered, "has not been the same since that letter arrived. Whispers and shadows, that's all we get now." As Evelyn's nervous glances toward the study did not escape Holmes's notice. "Sphere is a powerful lens," he remarked, "can cloud judgment or sharpen it to a keen edge." As evening fell and the gas lamps outside flickered once again, Holmes and I prepared for our visit to the old chapel. I could sense his mind racing through possibilities. What secrets lay hidden in that forsaken place, and what part it played in this web of mystery? Before we left, Holmes paused by the window, eyes fixed on the swirling fog. "The game is afoot, Watson," he said quietly. "Every detail, every shadow, every whispered word will guide us to the truth. But we must tread carefully. There are forces at play here that will not suffer discovery lightly." I nodded, my heart pounding with equal parts anticipation and dread. The journey ahead promised peril, deception, and revelations that would challenge even Holmes's legendary powers of deduction. And so, as night descended upon London once more, we set forth to confront the secrets of the past, the echoes of a hidden world, and the enigma that was the death of Lord Frederick Grimshaw. The journey to the old chapel on Fleet Street was marked by a creeping stillness that seemed to swallow the gaslit streets whole. The fog, thicker than the previous nights, clung to our coats and whispered in the narrow alleys, wrapping London in a cloak of uncertainty. Holmes moved with his usual purposeful stride, eyes bright with determination, while I felt the weight of unease settle upon my shoulders. Upon arrival, the chapel stood as a ruinous monument to forgotten faith, its stone walls cracked and vine-choked, windows shattered and yawning like hollow eyes. The heavy wooden door, swollen with age, groaned ominously as Holmes pushed it open, revealing the dank, shadowed interior. We stepped inside, cautiously. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay, mingled with the faintest trace of incense, as if some unseen presence lingered still. Holmes's keen gaze took in every detail: the faded frescoes, the broken pews, the scattered remnants of a time long past. "This place," Holmes murmured, "is no mere ruin. It is a vault of secrets, perhaps a stage for clandestine meetings." He crouched to inspect the floor, toting faint impressions in the dust footprints leading toward the altar. As we followed the trail, a low murmur caught my attention. It was coming from beneath the altar's narrow trapdoor, half hidden by debris. Holmes produced a small lantern and pried it open, revealing a steep stairway descending into darkness. "Shall we?" he asked, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. I swallowed hard, but nodded. Together, we descended into the cold, shadowed crypt beneath the chapel. The air grew colder, damp, and oppressive. The flickering lantern cast long shadows against ancient stone walls, revealing a small chamber lined with faded tapestries and strange symbols carved into the rock. At the center lay a heavy iron chest, locked but not securely. Holmes produced a slender tool from his coat and deftly picked the lock. The lid creaked open to reveal a collection of papers, letters, and a small, leather-bound diary. He lifted the diary carefully, thumbing through the fragile pages. "Here, Watson," he said, "we may find the key to this labyrinth." The diary belonged to a man named Alistair Eldridge, the initials AEL from the mysterious letter. His entries painted a vivid picture of a man caught between worlds, an aristocrat entangled in secret societies, a seeker of forbidden knowledge, and, ultimately, a man terrified for his life. One passage read, "October 30th, the shadows close in. I have uncovered truths some would kill to protect. The serpent's legacy haunts my every step. None. The chapel holds the answers, but it may also be my tomb." Holmes's eyes darkened. Our Mr. Eldridge was clearly in peril. It seems Lord Grimshaw was not the sole occupant of these secrets. As we sifted through the papers, Holmes unfolded a crumpled map marked with cryptic symbols and an address corresponding to Westcliff Terrace, our current location. "A circle closes upon itself," he mused. Returning to the surface, we were greeted by the chill of the London night and the distant toll of a church bell. Lady Evelina awaited us anxiously in the parlor. Holmes laid the diary and documents before her. "Madame, it appears your late husband was deeply involved with Mr. Eldridge in his endeavors. These writings suggest a hidden society, one that revered the serpent as a symbol, perhaps a brotherhood operating in the shadows of this very city." Lady Evelina's face paled. I suspected as much, though he never spoke of it openly. "The serpent emblem has appeared in his correspondence and personal effects for months." Holmes nodded. "It is the thread that ties our puzzle together. I propose that Lord Grimshaw's death was not a simple natural event, but a consequence of his entanglement with this society." The lady's eyes brimmed with tears. "But who would wish him harm, and why such secrecy?" Holmes's gaze shifted to me, his expression grave. "These societies thrive on secrecy and fear. Betrayal within their ranks is often met with swift and severe punishment. I suspect Lord Grimshaw's terror in his final moments was no mere illness, but the shadow of betrayal." Inspector Lestrade entered at that moment, having completed his interviews with the staff. "I have spoken with the servants at length. Each denies knowledge of the diary or society, yet their stories conflict on crucial details. Miss Evelyn's absence and Mr. Harris's strange behavior raise suspicions." Holmes tapped his fingers on the table. "As always, appearances deceive. We must consider that some among the household may be more deeply involved than they admit." The room grew tense, the weight of suspicion pressing down like the London fog itself. Holmes continued. Our first working theory, Watson, is that Lord Grimshaw's death was orchestrated by members of this secret society, perhaps to prevent the dissemination of dangerous knowledge or to silence a defector. I swallowed, uneasy with the implications. Okay, but how was the murder committed? If the door was locked from within and no signs of violence appeared, Holmes's eyes gleamed with that inscrutable light. That, my dear Watson, is the question we must answer next. For now, we have laid the groundwork of motive, rooted in secrecy, betrayal among shadows, and the deadly power of fear. T. paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Our next steps must be careful. We stand on the edge of a precipice, and one false move could send us tumbling into darkness. As I reflected on Holmes's theory, the pieces of the puzzle seemed simultaneously clearer and more tangled. The interplay of secret societies, cryptic symbols, and the death of a man caught in their web presented a challenge unlike any I had yet faced. Lady Evelina's whispered prayers, the servants' evasions, and the cryptic warnings all hinted at a deeper malevolence lurking beneath the surface of polite society. That night, as I lay awake in the dim glow of our Baker Street rooms, I pondered Holmes's words in the shadowed world into which we had ventured. The line between friend and foe blurred, and the truth, if it could be found, would demand every ounce of our wits and courage. The game, as Holmes had said, was very much afoot. Chapter 03. The days that followed were a tempest of investigation, reflection, and restless nights. Holmes, as ever, was a whirlwind of activity, darting from one lead to the next, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that stubbornly resisted completion. I, meanwhile, sought to steady my own thoughts and observations, chronicling each development with care, hoping to glimpse the logic hidden within Holmes's enigmatic deductions. Our inquiries at Westcliff Terrace continued in earnest. Holmes spent long hours scrutinizing the household, the staff, and the collection of papers and artifacts linked to the Serpent Society. Yet it was a small and seemingly insignificant detail that would, as so often in our experience, provide the breakthrough that eluded all else. It was during a routine examination of the study that Holmes's keen eye was drawn to the hearth, grand fireplace of carved stone, now cold, but once the heart of many a late-night contemplation. The ashes had been recently disturbed, suggesting someone had been there not long ago. Holmes probed deeper, carefully lifting the heavy iron grate to reveal beneath it a hollow, nearly invisible to the casual observer. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, to protect it from the damp, was a small box, old and worn but sturdy. Holmes produced it gingerly, his fingers steady despite the weight of anticipation. Curious, he murmured, placing it on the desk. The past, it seems, has been deliberately buried. With deft fingers, he unfastened the box and withdrew its contents: a bundle of faded letters, some photographs, and a small leather pouch. The letters, penned in various hands, spoke of secret meetings, coded warnings, and a tangled web of alliances and betrayals within the Serpent Society. One photograph, in particular, caught my attention: a group of men and women standing solemnly before the very chapel we had explored, their faces a mixture of resolve and fear. Holmes examined the pouch last, extracting from it a curious object, a delicate key, wrought from silver and engraved with a serpent emblem. It was unlike any key I had seen before, ornate, almost ceremonial. Holmes held it up to the light, his expression unreadable. Key. It is a token of trust within this brotherhood, a symbol as much as a tool, and it may open doors we have yet to discover. Our focus returned to the letters. One, dated but a fortnight before Lord Grimshaw's death, was addressed simply to him and bore a chilling message: "The serpent's truth is venomous. Beware the bite." The handwriting was jagged and hurried, as if penned in haste or fear. Holmes's eyes gleamed with determination. This letter confirms that Grimshaw was marked, targeted, not only by secrets, but by enemies who feared his knowledge. I noticed Holmes's hand tremble ever so slightly as he read further. "Watson," he said quietly, "I suspect this small box and its contents have been concealed here for a reason. The study may yet hold a hidden compartment, a secret passage, or a forgotten chamber." I shared his eagerness as we resumed our meticulous search, examining every panel and fixture. It was hours later, when the sun had dipped low and the household had grown still, that Holmes's persistence was rewarded. Behind a false backing in the bookshelf, hidden beneath a row of dusty tomes, we discovered a narrow aperture. The silver key fit perfectly into a small lock, and with a faint click, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a concealed alcove. Inside lay an assortment of objects, ledger thick with entries, another diary, and a collection of curiosities, a serpent-shaped dagger, a vial of dark liquid, and a bundle of parchments sealed with wax. Holmes carefully examined the ledger. The entries chronicled financial transactions, encoded messages implicating several influential figures in the city. The diary, penned by Lord Grimshaw himself, revealed his growing anxiety as he sought to extricate himself from the society's grasp. One passage was particularly striking. November 8th, "They watch me still. Their patience wears thin. If I am to survive, I must expose them or vanish from this life forever." Holmes looked up, eyes blazing. Grimshaw was a man caught in a vice, trapped between the desire for truth and the peril of discovery. Our examination was interrupted by a sudden knock at the study door. Mr. Clark entered, his usual composure shaken. "Mr. Holmes, I bring news that may be of consequence. Miss Evelyn has been found in the garden, unconscious. She claims to have seen a figure lurking near the chapel last night, someone she feared deeply." Holmes exchanged a glance with me, his expression unreadable. "We must see her at once." In the garden, beneath the pallid light of a waning moon, Miss Evelyn lay upon a bench, pale but recovering. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a haunted gaze. She said the figure wore a mask," she whispered, voice trembling. "A serpent mask, and they spoke of silence, keeping secrets buried." Holmes knelt beside her, his tone gentle yet probing. "Did they threaten you? What did they say?" Miss Evelyn shivered. "Only that some truths are too dangerous, that the serpent's bite leaves no room for mercy." As we escorted her indoors, I could not help but feel the shadow of menace growing ever more tangible. The Serpent Society, once an obscure curiosity, now loomed as a force of dark influence, wielding fear and silence like weapons. Back in the parlor, Holmes sat deep in thought, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Watson, this buried clue, the concealed alcove, the letters, the key has illuminated a path previously obscured. We now stand closer to understanding the stakes of this deadly game." I nodded, yet the questions pressed heavily upon my mind. Who was the masked figure? What secrets had Lord Grimshaw uncovered that compelled such ruthless silence? And who among those we trusted might be entwined in this web of conspiracy? Holmes's gaze met mine, a flicker of resolve in his eyes. "Soon, Watson, all shall be revealed, but we must be cautious. The serpent's bite is swift and unforgiving." That night, as the city slumbered beneath the cloak of fog, I lay awake, contemplating the fragments of a truth half glimpsed, secret so perilous it had consumed a man and threatened all who dared approach it. In the quiet of Baker Street, understood anew that beneath the surface of Victorian society lay a shadow world, one of hidden allegiances, deadly intrigue, and whispered threats. And it was into that darkness that Holmes and I were now irrevocably drawn. The days grew heavier with uncertainty. Each lead we pursued revealing new depths of shadow and misdirection. What had begun as a straightforward investigation into a mysterious death had spiraled into a labyrinth of deceit, suspicion, and fractured loyalties. Holmes and I found ourselves navigating a maze where every path promised revelation, yet often ended in dead ends or fresh enigmas. The household at Westcliff Terrace had become a crucible of tension. The servants whispered behind closed doors, their glances laden with fear and distrust. Lady Evelina, once composed, now appeared worn and fragile, a woman caught in the grip of secrets that threatened to consume her. The Serpent Society's reach seemed pervasive, its invisible tendrils weaving through the fabric of the household and beyond. Holmes was relentless. He interviewed the staff repeatedly, probing for inconsistencies, elusive truths, or a slip of the tongue. Mr. Clark, the butler, remained stoic but evasive, his loyalty unwavering yet shadowed by a certain reticence. Miss Evelyn's condition improved, yet her memories of the masked figure remained fragmented and fearful. Mr. Harris, the gardener, grew increasingly withdrawn, his silences louder than words. It was during one such interview that Holmes paused, brow furrowed, as Mr. Harris revealed a curious detail on the night of Lord Grimshaw's death. Harris confessed, "I was tending to the garden until late, but near midnight I heard voices in the study. It was Lady Evelina speaking in hushed tones with an unknown man." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Did you recognize the man?" "No, sir. His voice was muffled, and he wore a cloak. I dared not approach." The revelation cast fresh suspicion upon Lady Evelina, the very figure who had sought Holmes's aid. Could she be entangled more deeply than she admitted? Holmes did not press further at that moment, but instead returned his focus to the documents we had uncovered: the ledger, the diary, and the letters. The encoded transactions implicated several prominent London figures, their names carefully obscured by cipher and metaphor. Holmes enlisted the aid of a cryptographer, a wizened old man with a penchant for puzzles, to decipher the entries. Hours passed as the cryptographer labored, his brows knitted in concentration. Finally, he presented a partial translation that revealed plans for a meeting at a private club the Serpent's Den located in the darker quarter of the city. The club was reputed to be a haunt for influential members of the Serpent Society, a place where power and secrets were exchanged like currency. Holmes's expression darkened. "This is no ordinary social gathering. It is the nexus of influence and menace." I found myself uneasy with the prospect of infiltrating such a den of shadows. Yet Holmes's resolve was unshaken. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at Westcliff Terrace grew more oppressive. One evening, as I prepared to leave the house, Lady Evelina pulled me aside, her voice trembling. "Dr. Watson, I fear the walls have ears. Someone among us betrays Lord Grimshaw's confidence. I do not know whom to trust. Her words hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder that the serpent's poison had spread far and wide. Holmes, ever perceptive, suggested a new tactic: feigned ignorance. He planned to pretend that we knew far less than we did, baiting the culprit into revealing themselves through overconfidence or misstep. "It is a dangerous game," Holmes warned, "but one necessary to unravel this tangled skein." The following days were a study in subtlety. Holmes engaged with the household in casual conversation, planting hints and observing reactions with surgical precision. He watched for nervous twitches, sidelong glances, and the faintest signs of concealment. At one point, Holmes confronted Mr. Clark directly in a manner that suggested suspicion but revealed no evidence. The butler's calm facade cracked for a moment, a flicker of defiance, or was it fear, passing through his eyes. Miss Evelyn, meanwhile, began to recover more fully, but her manner became erratic. She confided in me during a quiet moment, revealing her terror not only of the masked figure, but of something far worse: the possibility that those closest to her were complicit I see shadows where none should be, she whispered. And here whispers that chilled the blood. One evening, as Holmes and I sat by the fire at Baker Street, he shared his reflections. The Serpent Society thrives on secrecy, manipulation, and fear. Its members protect one another, but cracks appear when trust falters. We must exploit these fissures. His eyes glittered with resolve. The false trails we encounter are deliberately designed to mislead, confuse, and protect the guilty. As the days wore on, our investigation led us deeper into London's underbelly. We secured entrance to the Serpent's Den, an opulent and shadowed club where whispered alliances were forged over glasses of dark spirits. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and guarded conversation. Holmes moved through the room with practiced ease, his eyes scanning faces, noting gestures, and picking up fragments of overheard dialogue. Several members wore serpent pins, a subtle yet unmistakable mark of allegiance. Holmes managed to engage a few in conversation, probing their knowledge of Lord Grimshaw and the recent disturbances. Most were evasive, but a few hinted at unrest within the society factions, at odds over power and loyalty. Holmes gathered that Lord Grimshaw had been perceived as a threat to the delicate balance, its desire to expose secrets endangering the entire network. Returning to Baker Street late that night, Holmes shared his grim assessment. The Serpent Society is fracturing, Watson. Such divisions breed violence. Our adversary may be one who fears exposure above all else. I could not help but notice the strain in Holmes's usually unshakable demeanor. 8. The deeper we ventured, the more perilous the game became. The following morning, a startling development arrived. Miss Evelyn was missing. The household was thrown into panic. Lady Evelina was distraught, imploring us to find the young woman before harm came to her. Holmes's mind raced. Was Evelyn a victim, or worse, a conspirator? We scoured the city, following rumors and fleeting sightings. Finally, we discovered Evelyn hiding in a modest lodging, her eyes wide with fear but unharmed. She confessed to receiving threats warnings to abandon the investigation or face dire consequences. She also revealed having secretly copied entries from Lord Grimshaw's diary, which she had hidden away. Holmes immediately sought to secure these documents, understanding their importance. Yet, as the shadows lengthened and our circle of trust tightened, the ever-present question haunted me. Who among us was the serpent in disguise? The false trails multiplied. Suspicion grew, and the true nature of the threat remained elusive. Holmes's voice broke the silence. As we reviewed the evidence late one night, we are closing in, Watson. But the serpent strikes from the shadows. One misstep and the game is lost. The night crept on, and London lay beneath a veil of fog and danger. The dance of deception continued, and the line between ally and enemy blurred ever more. Chapter 04. The air in Baker Street is thick with anticipation as Holmes and I prepared our carefully laid plan. The pieces of the puzzle had coalesced enough for Holmes to set his trap, a gambit that required patience, subtlety, and nerves of steel. The Serpent Society was cunning, their members skilled in deceit and secrecy, but Holmes had an advantage few others possessed: his profound understanding of human nature. Watson, he said one evening, his gaze sharp and unyielding, we must debate our adversary with a carefully crafted illusion of ignorance. They believe we stumble blindly, unaware of their machinations. It is this overconfidence that will be their undoing. Our objective was clear: to provoke the guilty party into revealing themselves, either through an attempt to retrieve the incriminating diary entries or by betraying their involvement in another way. To that end, Holmes arranged for a private meeting at Westcliff Terrace, announcing that we had recovered the complete diary and were ready to confront the truth. The announcement was deliberate, calculated whisper designed to ripple through the serpent's network. In the days that followed, the tension was palpable. The household became a stage for watchful eyes and silent footsteps. Lady Evelina, though, still fragile, managed a courageous facade. Evelyn, recovering from her ordeal, appeared resolute, though her glance sometimes darted toward the shadows with lingering fear. Holmes and I maintained a quiet vigilance, ready for the trap to spring on the appointed evening. As fog rolled thick over the city and gas lamps flickered uncertainly, we gathered in the parlor. Inspector Lestrade had joined us, prepared for whatever revelations might come. The household staff had been discreetly informed to report any unusual activity, and several loyal servants stood ready in the wings. Holmes paced slowly, eyes narrowed. The serpent's venom is subtle, but it betrays itself to those who watch keenly. Suddenly, a faint noise came from the study, the softest creak of a door, the whisper of footsteps. Holmes motioned for silence and moved toward the source. I followed closely, heart pounding through the partially open door. We glimpsed a figure, cloaked and hooded, rifling through the desk drawers with swift, practiced motions. Holmes stepped forward, his voice a calm but commanding thunder. "Stop. Your presence is no longer concealed." The figure froze, then slowly turned, revealing the unmistakable eyes of Mr. Clark. The butler. A silence fell, heavy and charged. "You, Clark," Holmes intoned, the loyal servant who had stood silently by. Mr. Clark's face betrayed no surprise, only a cold, resolute calm. "You see, only the servant, Mr. Holmes, but I have served a cause greater than any master." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "And that cause is the Serpent Society." Clark nodded. "Indeed, I have protected their interests, ensured their secrets, remained buried. Lord Grimshaw's ambitions threaten to unravel what we have preserved for decades. Inspector Lestrade stepped forward. "Mr. Clark, you stand accused of orchestrating Lord Grimshaw's demise and attempting to conceal evidence." Clark's lips curled in a bitter smile. "Accusations are weapons of the ignorant. The truth is darker, more complex. You know nothing of the power you challenge." Holmes held up the silver key we had found in the secret alcove. "This token, your emblem, and your furtive movements betray your allegiance. It is enough." Clark's composure cracked for a moment, and he lunged suddenly toward the fireplace. Holmes was quicker, intercepting him with a firm grip as Lestrade, and I moved to restrain the man. "Your game is at an end," Holmes said quietly. "But tell us, why kill Grimshaw? What was he about to reveal?" Clark's eyes gleamed with bitter conviction. Grimshaw sought to expose the Serpent Society's influence on the city's elite, their manipulation of politics, finance, and justice. Such exposure would have destroyed us all. His death was necessary to preserve the order. Holmes nodded slowly, piecing together the final threads. "And yet, your fear betrayed you. The letters, the diary, the threats. You underestimated the resolve of those who seek truth." Clark sneered. "Truth is a fragile thing, Mr. Holmes, easily shattered." As Clark was led away by Lestrade, Holmes turned to Lady Evelina and Miss Evelyn, offering what comfort he could. "Your courage has been tested," he said, "but justice has prevailed. The serpent's poison has been purged, at least for now." Later, as the household began to settle, Holmes and I reflected upon the case in the quiet of Baker Street. "The Serpent Society," Holmes mused, "is but one of many such shadows lurking beneath the veneer of society. They thrive on fear and secrecy, weaving webs that bind men's souls." I looked at him, admiration mingled with lingering unease, and the human cost. Holmes's eyes softened, a rare flicker of warmth. "That is the burden we bear, Watson, to pierce the shadows and bring light, however fleeting, to the darkest corners. As dawn broke over the fog-laden streets, I realized anew that beneath the gas lamps and cobblestones lay a world of secrets, danger, and human frailty. And it was a world where Sherlock Holmes's brilliance shone brightest. The atmosphere in the drawing room was tense but expectant, as if the very walls awaited Holmes's next move. After the arrest of Mr. Clark, the household's fragile calm had been shattered, yet a larger truth remained to be laid bare. Holmes, as ever, had been quietly gathering the final threads, preparing to weave them into a tapestry of revelation that would both enlighten and astonish. I sat beside Holmes, notebook in hand, ready to transcribe the unveiling that I knew would soon come. Lady Evelina and Miss Evelyn, still shaken but resolute, listened intently, while Inspector Lestrade stood by the doorway, alert and watchful. Holmes rose slowly, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows on his sharp features. He began, his voice steady and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have uncovered much in this investigation. Secret societies, cryptic letters, and a web of deceit woven beneath the genteel facade of Victorian London. But the heart of the matter lies not merely in the serpent society's existence, but in the motivations and machinations that led to Lord Grimshaw's untimely demise." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Mr. Clark, the loyal butler, confessed to his allegiance with the society and his role in orchestrating Grimshaw's death to protect their secrets. Yet, his confession only reveals the surface of a far deeper and more complex intrigue. Holmes moved to the table and laid out the key pieces of evidence: the serpent-emblazoned cuff-link, the hidden alcove, the diary entries, and the threatening letters. "Observe the cuff-link," he said, holding it aloft. "Though found in a study, it bears a peculiar flaw, a minute engraving, visible only upon close inspection. This engraving matches that found on the personal effects of none other than Lady Evelina herself." A gasp rippled through the room. Holmes continued. "The diary entries, while penned by Lord Grimshaw and Mr. Eldridge, bear inconsistencies in handwriting, suggesting an attempt to fabricate or obscure certain passages. More intriguingly, ledgers-coded transactions implicate a figure who sought to maintain control over the Serpent Society's operations." He turned to Lady Evelina. "Madame, it appears you have more knowledge of these affairs than you have disclosed." Her composure faltered for a moment, but then she nodded with quiet resolve. "I was not ignorant of my husband's associations," she admitted, "nor of the dangers that threatened him, but I feared what exposure might bring: ruin, scandal, even worse." Holmes nodded thoughtfully, a prudent fear, but one that ultimately failed to protect. He then revealed the final piece of the puzzle: the serpent mask described by Miss Evelyn, worn not by a stranger, but by a close confidant, tasked with intimidation and concealment. A mask that bore the initials of Lady Evelina's trusted advisor, Mr. Harrington. The room fell into stunned silence. Holmes pressed on. "Mr. Harrington, your role has been to ensure the society's secrets remain safe, even at the cost of violence and deceit. You coerced Miss Evelyn, manipulated the household, and sought to misdirect our investigation." At that moment, the door opened, and Mr. Harrington entered, his face pale and eyes dark with resignation. "I am no villain, Mr. Holmes," he said quietly, "only a man bound by duty to a cause older and greater than any of us." Holmes's expression was unyielding. "Your duty was twisted into cruelty and betrayal." Harrington sank into a chair, the weight of guilt unmistakable. "Lord Grimshaw threatened to unravel everything. I was charged with preventing that by any means necessary." Inspector Lestrade stepped forward, handcuffs ready. "Mr. Harrington, you are under arrest for conspiracy, intimidation, and obstruction of justice." As Harrington was escorted away, Holmes turned to Lady Evelina and Miss Evelyn. "This case," he said softly, "is a testament to the complexities of human nature. Loyalty entangled with fear, love shadowed by secrecy, and the lengths, too, which men will go to preserve power. Lady Evelina wiped a tear, her voice trembling. Thank you, Mr. Holmes, for unveiling the truth and bringing peace to a troubled house. Holmes smiled faintly, then addressed me. Watson, it is often said that the truth lies hidden beneath layers of deception. Our task is to peel them away, one by one, until the core is exposed. As the household began to heal from its wounds, I reflected on the profound insights Holmes had revealed, how appearances could deceive, how the human heart could harbor both nobility and darkness, and how justice, though sometimes slow, was an enduring light. That evening, as we returned to Baker Street, Holmes mused aloud. The Serpent Society, though quelled here, remains a shadow over London. But with vigilance and reason, we shall confront such shadows wherever they lurk. I could only nod, grateful once more for the steadfast mind beside me, guiding us through the murk of mystery and human frailty alike. Chapter 5. The days following the unraveling of the Serpent Society's deadly web were filled with a profound stillness, as if the city itself were exhaling after a long-held breath. West Cliff Terrace, once a crucible of fear and suspicion, began to reclaim its dignity. Lady Evelina, now freed from the shadows that had loomed over her family, endeavored to rebuild what had been fractured, a task both daunting and necessary. Holmes and I visited the house once more before departing. London's East End. The atmosphere was gentler now, though the scars of recent events remained etched in the faces and gestures of those who had endured the ordeal. Lady Evelina greeted us with a mixture of gratitude and weariness. Your intervention, she said softly, has spared us a fate worse than grief. To know the truth, painful though it may be, is a balm upon wounds unseen. Miss Evelyn, too, had found a fragile strength. She confided in me a growing resolve to speak openly, to refuse the silence that had so long protected darkness. Holmes observed quietly, his gaze distant, as if pondering the nature of justice beyond the walls of this once troubled home. Our conversations turned to the motivations that had driven the Serpent Society and those ensnared within it. Holmes's reflections were as piercing as ever. Power, he said, has a venom of its own. It corrupts not merely the body politic, but the very souls of men. In their pursuit of control, the members of the Serpent Society lost sight of their humanity. I asked, and Mr. Clark, Mr. Harrington, did you believe they saw themselves as villains, or merely as guardians of a greater good? Holmes's eyes gleamed with a hint of melancholy. That is the tragedy of such men, Watson. They convince themselves their cause justifies the means, that the ends sanctified their actions. Yet, in the crucible of truth, such justifications melt away, leaving only cold consequences. Outside, the streets of London resumed their ceaseless rhythm, carriages rattling over cobblestones, vendors shouting their wares, the distant whistle of steam engines. The city marched forward, indifferent to the quiet reckonings playing out in its alleys and drawing rooms back at Baker Street. Holmes resumed his habitual routines. The violin filled the air on many an evening, its melancholy strains weaving through the gaslight and smoke. I often found him staring into the flickering flames of the hearth, lost in thought. One afternoon, as I joined him over tea, Holmes spoke with unusual candor. This case, he mused, reminds us that beneath the veneer of civilization lies a darker substratum where secrets fester and menace thrives. Our task is to shine a light into those shadows, however unwelcomed that light may be. I nodded, struck by the weight of his words. The Serpent Society's influence extends beyond one house, does it not? How many such webs are woven in the city's undercurrents? Holmes's smile was thin and knowing. Too many, my dear Watson, it's too many. But each revelation weakens their hold, and each truth unveiled is a step toward justice. In the weeks that followed, news circulated quietly of arrests and inquiries linked to the Serpent Society's network. The press, eager for scandal, but constrained by propriety, reported vague accounts of secret conspiracies and societal intrigues without naming names. For us, the victory was bittersweet. The case had tested our endurance, our trust, and our resolve. It was a reminder that justice is seldom simple, often tangled in the complexities of human ambition and fear. One evening, Holmes received a letter, brief, unsigned, but unmistakably a warning. The Serpent Society, though fractured, had not disappeared entirely. Holmes regarded the letter thoughtfully. They are like the serpent itself, shedding their skin, but never truly gone. I asked, "And what will you do?" Eyes gleamed with that familiar fire. "We remain vigilant, Watson. For as long as shadows fall upon London, there will be those who seek to manipulate them. Our work is never done." As the season turned and the city prepared for winter's chill, I reflected on the lessons of the case about the resilience of truth, the fragility of trust, and the enduring struggle between light and darkness. Westcliff Terrace would heal in time, its secrets laid bare, its poison purged, but the serpent's legacy would linger as a reminder of the hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface of society. And in the quiet moments between cases, I found solace in the steadfast presence of my friend and partner, Sherlock Holmes, a man whose brilliance and determination illuminated even the darkest corners of the human soul. The fire flickered low in the quiet of our Baker Street sitting room, casting wavering shadows upon the walls lined with books and curiosities. Holmes sat in his favorite armchair, violin resting idly on his lap, his sharp gaze fixed upon the dancing flames. I, too, found solace in the warmth, though my mind was restless with the echoes of recent events. The Serpent Society's venom had been drawn from the heart of Westcliff Terrace, its poisonous tendrils severed by truth and resolve. Yet, as Holmes had often reminded me, the world is seldom cleansed entirely by a single victory. "Watson," Holmes began softly, his voice breaking the contemplative silence, "we have ventured once more into the tangled web of human ambition, fear, and secrecy. The serpent's coil is long and winding, and though we have severed one part, many more remain hidden." I nodded, sensing the weight of his words. Holmes continued, "This case has reminded me that human nature is a complex mosaic, capable of nobility and betrayal in equal measure. It is a dance of shadows and light, where the brightest intentions may cast the darkest silhouettes." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with that inscrutable spark that had guided us through countless mysteries. In Lord Grimshaw's demise, we saw the peril of secrets kept too long, and in Lady Evelina's courage, the redemptive power of truth embraced. I glanced at Holmes, curiosity compelling me to ask, "Do you believe the Serpent Society is vanquished, or merely dormant?" Holmes smiled faintly, a shadow of a smile that held both wisdom and warning. "Dormant, no doubt. Like the serpent in its lair, it waits patiently, shedding skins and hiding beneath the soil of society. We must remain vigilant, ever ready to confront the darkness when it stirs." The room fell silent once more, save for the crackling fire. I reflected on the subtle lines Holmes had drawn between justice and mercy, truth and deception. "Holmes," I ventured, "what guides you through these endless battles against shadows? What gives you the resolve to persist?" He regarded me thoughtfully. "Curiosity, Watson, the insatiable urge to understand the workings of the world and the human mind, and a profound belief that truth, however elusive, is the compass by which we navigate life." Holmes's gaze drifted to the window, where the first pale light of dawn began to touch the London skyline. "Each case," he said quietly, "is a lesson in the frailty and strength of mankind. We uncover not only crimes, but the very nature of those who commit them. It is a journey both outward and inward. Aside, grateful for the companionship that had turned perilous nights and tangled mysteries into shared quests for meaning. Do you ever tire, Holmes, of the darkness, the deceit? He shook his head slowly. No, Watson. The darkness exists as a counterpoint to the light. Without it, our victories would mean little. It is the struggle that defines us. For a moment, the great detective was silent, lost in thought. Then, with a glint of dry humor, he quipped, "Besides, someone must keep the serpents in check. And I am, by nature and necessity, that someone." I smiled, the familiar banter balmed against the weight of recent revelations. As the morning sun rose, bathing the room in golden light, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The Serpent Society, though cunning and pervasive, was no match for the relentless pursuit of truth and justice. And with Sherlock Holmes by my side, I knew that London's shadows, no matter how deep, would never remain unchallenged. With that thought, I closed my notebook, ready to face whatever mysteries the city might next unfold. Chapter 06. The City of London, ever restless, moved on with its ceaseless rhythm, seemingly indifferent to the shadows that danced at its edges. Yet, beneath the veneer of bustle and brilliance, I sensed the quiet ripples left behind by the Serpent Society's upheaval, whispers that echoed faintly but persistently, hinting at stories yet untold. Baker Street resumed its familiar cadence, the rhythms of daily life folding around Holmes and me like a comfortable cloak. But I could see the subtle shifts in my friend's demeanor, moments when his piercing gaze would darken, eyes sharpening as if scanning beyond the visible. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the window panes, Holmes invited me to sit with him by the fire. His violin lay aside, a rare gesture of calm. "Watson," he began, voice low and reflective, "the Serpent Society, though disrupted, is but a symptom of a larger malady. It's a thirst for power, the games of influence, and the hunger for secrecy. They permeate the very foundations of society." I nodded, understanding that for Holmes, the case was never merely a puzzle solved, but a window into human nature's vast complexity. "The darkness we confront," T continued, "is not confined to a single house or group. It resides within the hearts of many, hidden beneath layers of civility and custom." He paused, then reached for a leather-bound volume, the very diary that had sparked our perilous journey. Opening it carefully, he fingered the faded ink as though tracing the outlines of a ghost. "In these pages," he said, "we find not only evidence, but the echoes of a man's struggle, a battle between conscience and circumstance. Lord Grimshaw's courage was both his salvation and his doom." I looked closely at Holmes, sensing a rare softness in his tone. "Do you ever wonder, Holmes," I asked, "about the lives affected beyond what we see? The families, the hopes crushed beneath, the weight of secrets?" His gaze met mine steadily. "I do, Watson. It is for them that we fight, for the quiet justice that must sometimes work in silence, far from the glare of acclaim." Days later, a letter arrived at our door, unsigned but unmistakably penned by one within the Serpent Society's remaining network. Its words were cryptic, yet chilling. "The serpent may lose its head, but its body writhes still. Beware those who watch from shadows, for they hunger to reclaim what was lost." Holmes regarded the letter thoughtfully. "A warning or a promise," he mused. "We must heed it carefully." In the weeks that followed, subtle signs of movement rippled through London's underbelly, furtive meetings, whispered conversations, and shadows that flickered where light should have been. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, Holmes's resolve never wavered. He prepared as always, sharpening his mind and senses for the battles yet to come. One evening, as we walked the fog-laden streets, he stopped beneath a flickering gas lamp and spoke quietly. "Watson, The city is a living organism, constantly shifting between light and dark. Our role is to maintain balance, to be the watchers at the gate. I felt a surge of admiration for the man beside me, whose intellect and courage transcended mere detective work, venturing into the realm of guardian and philosopher. Whatever challenges arise, Holmes said, we will face them with the same relentless pursuit of truth. As the fog thickened around us, swallowing the gaslight into a halo of mystery, I understood anew the unending nature of our work. The serpent's whisper was but one of many voices calling from the darkness, and as long as such voices stirred, Sherlock Holmes would answer with mind, heart, and unyielding will in that moment. I felt profoundly grateful to witness the quiet brilliance of a man who, though shrouded in mystery himself, brought clarity to a world that so often seemed cloaked in shadows. In the weeks that followed our victory over the Serpent Society, the lingering scent of that dark world seemed to hang in the air like a fading fog, stubborn and elusive, though the immediate peril had passed, and the household at Westcliff Terrace was slowly mending its fractured peace. Holmes and I knew that the true struggle was far from over. Our lives, after all, were intertwined with the city's secrets, bound to its shadows as much as its light. The cases we solved were but momentary illuminations, brief flares that revealed more mysteries lurking beneath the surface. One evening, as the lamps of Baker Street cast their familiar glow upon the cluttered study, Holmes sat quietly, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His usually restless mind seemed momentarily still, contemplating the weight of recent events. "Watson," he began, his voice low and thoughtful, "our encounter with the Serpent Society has confirmed an unsettling truth. The very fabric of society is woven with threads of ambition, secrecy, and power struggles. These forces are ancient, pervasive, and, like the serpent itself, capable of shedding skins and renewing themselves." I leaned forward, curious. "Do you think such societies operate with impunity, that their influence can never truly be broken?" Holmes's eyes gleamed with a mixture of solemnity and resolve. "They can be weakened, exposed, and constrained, but never entirely eradicated. Such is the nature of human institutions, especially those built on fear and control." He reached for a volume of obscure literature on secret orders and conspiracies, opening it to a page marked with a faded ribbon. "The Serpent Society is but one among many shadows within shadows. They reflect the darker impulses of humanity, which we must continually confront." I thought of the men we had brought to justice, Clark, Harrington, each a victim and a villain of their own making, caught in a web of loyalty and desperation. "Yet," I said, "there is also courage, Lady Evelyn's strength, Miss Evelyn's resilience. Those lights shine brightly against the darkness." Holmes nodded. "Indeed, Watson, it is these flickers of humanity that give hope and purpose to our endeavors. The struggle between light and shadow is eternal, but so too is the human spirit's capacity to seek truth and justice." The room grew quiet, save for the occasional scratch of Holmes's pen as he resumed his notes. I reflected on the nature of our work, the endless pursuit of clarity in a world rife with ambiguity. That night, I ventured to ask a question that had long intrigued me. "Holmes, throughout our investigations, you often speak of the importance of observation and deduction, but what of intuition? Does it play a role in your reasoning?" He smiled faintly, eyes narrowing with characteristic precision. "Intuition, Watson, is simply the culmination of accumulated knowledge, experience, and subconscious pattern recognition. It is the mind's rapid synthesis of facts before they are fully articulated." He tapped his temple lightly. "I trust observation first, but intuition guides where to look more closely. It is a compass, not a map." Our conversation lingered in my thoughts as days turned to weeks, the city's pulse continued, with new mysteries unfolding beyond the horizon. One morning, a letter arrived, bearing an unfamiliar seal, a subtle serpent entwined around a rose. Holmes examined it with interest. Noting the elegant script and cryptic phrasing, the serpent sheds many skins, but some truths remain hidden beneath. Seek beyond the veil, where the past and present entwine. His expression grew serious, a message from a new player, perhaps, or an old adversary resurfacing. I could not help but feel the familiar stirrings of anticipation and unease. Our respite was brief. The shadows would call us again. In quiet moments, Holmes revealed glimpses of his inner world, the restless mind always poised for the next puzzle. There is a profound beauty in unraveling mysteries, he said once. Each case is a story about human nature, about fears, desires, and the consequences of choices. He paused, then added, yet it is also a reminder of our own limitations. No man can know all truths, but the pursuit itself is what defines us. As I recorded these reflections, I realized how fortunate I was to bear witness to such brilliance, and how humbling it was to stand beside a man who saw beyond appearances into the heart of darkness and light alike. In the end, The Serpent Society was not merely a tale of crime and conspiracy, but a mirror held up to society's soul, a call to vigilance and compassion. And so, as London's fog wrapped the city once more, I resolved to continue chronicling the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, that enigmatic guardian of truth, whose intellect and heart illuminate even the murkiest corners of our world. For as long as shadows fall, the game remains afoot. Chapter 07. The fog lay thick over London once more, blurring the sharp edges of gas lamps and muffling the footsteps of those who navigated the labyrinthine streets. Even as the Serpent Society had been exposed and fractured, the city's pulse remained a steady reminder of the secrets still nestled within its heart. Holmes and I have returned to Baker Street after a brief respite, though neither of us have forgotten the weight of the serpent's whisper in the quiet of our shared quarters. Holmes often sat near the window, gazing beyond the bustling cityscape, as if reading a script written in the patterns of smoke and shadow. It was in these moments, when the violin lay untouched, that I glimpsed the depth of his contemplation, a mind that never truly rested, ever attuned to the unseen. One evening, over the steady tick of the clock and the occasional crackle from the fireplace, Holmes broke the silence. Watson, the Serpent Society was but a single coil in the great serpent of human intrigue. Our victory, while decisive, is no final chapter but a mere interruption. I leaned forward, curiosity piqued. Do you suspect other factions at work, other webs yet to be unraveled? Holmes nodded slowly. Indeed, the machinery of influence is intricate and vast. Men and women wield power, not always openly, through whispers, coded letters, and veiled threats. Such dynamics transcend individual cases, reflecting the perpetual conflict between order and chaos. Consider the countless faces we had, encountered victims, perpetrators, and those caught in between. Each played a part in the grander narrative, often unaware of the forces shaping their fate. Your mind, I said, is attuned to details most overlook. How do you maintain such clarity amid the noise? Holmes smiled faintly. Discipline and detachment, Watson. Okay. The world is a tempest of distraction, but the practiced eye sees patterns beneath the chaos. He stood abruptly and moved to his desk, where a fresh stack of letters awaited. The next case may be upon us already. Notice this, he said, handing me a note penned in a delicate but hurried hand. It read, "Beware the silent shadow that walks between worlds. Not all is as it seems." I felt a chill, a prelude to the mysteries that always beckoned with equal parts promise and peril. Days later, we received an unexpected visitor, a messenger from the Foreign Office bearing a sealed dossier. The contents hinted at a matter of national security intertwined with clandestine dealings, an invitation for Holmes to extend his talents beyond London's familiar streets. Holmes regarded the dossier with grave interest. The serpent's coil extends further than we imagined, Watson. Our duty may soon require crossing borders, both geographical and moral. I sensed the spark of challenge ignite within him, tempered by the responsibility that accompanied such knowledge. That evening, as the city's lights flickered through rain-streaked panes, I asked, "Do you ever weary of this life? The endless chase after shadows and half-truths?" Holmes's gaze was steady, resolute. Weariness is a luxury the truth cannot afford. Each revelation is a victory against ignorance and injustice. To cease is to surrender the light to darkness. Words lingered with me long after, echoing through the quiet hours in the weeks that followed. We prepared for what lay ahead, gathering resources, consulting contacts, and readying ourselves for journeys into the unknown. Yet, amid this bustle, Holmes remained the same enigmatic figure, restless, brilliant, and unwavering. One night, as we sat by the fire, he confided, "Watson, the human heart is a labyrinth, as perplexing as any crime. Understanding it is both our greatest challenge and our most vital weapon." I nodded, recalling the tangled emotions that had surfaced in the Serpent Society's wake: fear, loyalty, betrayal, and hope. "Whatever trials await," I said, "I am grateful to face them with you." Holmes's smile was rare and genuine, and I, dear Watson, could ask for no finer companion. As the city settled into slumber, I felt a profound sense of purpose and partnership, a quiet oath to pursue truth in all its forms, wherever it might lead, for in the end, the game is never truly finished. The shadows will always shift, the serpents will coil anew, and the pursuit of justice will continue relentless, necessary, and eternal. The first chill of autumn crept through London's streets, curling tendrils of fog around gas lamps and softening the hard edges of the city's endless stone. Baker Street retained its familiar atmosphere. The aroma of burning peat mingled with the faint scent of Holmes's pipe tobacco, the scattered papers and books, a testament to his restless intellect. Yet, beneath this comfortable veneer, an undercurrent of anticipation thrummed, as though the city itself awaited some unspoken signal. Holmes sat at his cluttered desk, meticulously reviewing a bundle of correspondence and newspaper clippings. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned each line with a precision that only years of practice could hone. "Watson," he said at last, looking up with a deliberate calm, "there are matters afoot that require our immediate attention. A delicate thread, previously unnoticed, has revealed itself." I approached, intrigued. "A new case?" He nodded. "Indeed, while the Serpent Society's influence may have been diminished, it was never wholly extinguished, and, as often occurs, when one shadow retreats, another emerges." Holmes handed me a small, folded note. The handwriting was elegant, almost poetic. "In the city's heart, beneath the surface, a secret festers. The past entwined with the present. Seek the hour when the clock strikes 13. 13. Curious," Holmes mused. "An invitation or a taunt?" I felt the familiar stir of curiosity and unease. "What do you make of it?" Holmes rose, pacing slowly. "It is a cipher, Watson, a riddle layered with meaning. The phrase, 'clock strikes 13' is particularly telling, an impossibility that points toward deception or hidden time." He paused by the window, peering out into the creeping mist. "We must investigate the significance of this message and the hour it references." In the days that followed, Holmes and I traced the origins of the note, leading us through a maze of London's forgotten corners. The city's underbelly revealed itself in whispered warnings, shadowed alleyways, and cryptic symbols etched onto walls long neglected. We visited an antiquarian clockmaker in Clockwell, an elderly man whose hands trembled with age, but whose eyes remained keen. The clock that strikes 13, he said thoughtfully, is not a clock at all, but a metaphor. In some traditions, it represents a hidden hour, a moment outside normal time when truths are revealed. Holmes nodded. Precisely. Our correspondent expects us to uncover something concealed during this hidden hour. Further inquiry pointed toward a clandestine meeting place, an abandoned chapel on the edge of the city. It's long rumored to harbor secrets beneath its cracked stones. On a moonless night, Holmes and I ventured to the chapel, our steps muffled by the wet cobblestones. The air was heavy with silence and the scent of damp earth inside. Shadows clung to every corner, and the faintest echo of footsteps seemed to reverberate in the stillness. Holmes examined the walls, the worn pews, and the altar with meticulous care. "Look here, Watson," he whispered, pointing to a faint inscription barely visible beneath layers of dust and grime. "Tempus fugit," said Veritas Manet. "Time flies, but truth remains." Suddenly, a faint click echoed as a hidden mechanism sprung, revealing a concealed compartment beneath the altar. Within lay a small, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age, but legible. Holmes opened it carefully, scanning the entries with growing intensity. "This journal," he murmured, "belonged to a man named Alistair Moresby, a figure once prominent in London's political circles, whose mysterious disappearance decades ago remains unsolved." The entries detailed clandestine meetings, coded messages, and a conspiracy that echoed with chilling familiarity hints of a powerful cabal manipulating events behind the scenes. "This," Holmes said, "is not merely a relic. It is a map of secrets that span generations." As we delved deeper into the journal's contents, I realized the stakes were higher than ever. The Serpent Society was but one thread woven into a vast tapestry of intrigue and power. Holmes's eyes gleamed with renewed fervor. "Watson, this case will test our wits and resolve like never before. The clock may strike 13, but we must be ready to meet whatever truths emerge from that hidden hour." Returning to Baker Street, we began piecing together the fragments of this new enigma, each discovery leading to more questions, and each question drawing us deeper into the shadowy labyrinth beneath London's surface. The city, with all its fog and mystery, remained a place of endless puzzles, and I, as always, was honored to follow where Holmes's brilliant mind would lead. The clock on Baker Street chimed midnight with a solemnity that seemed to echo through the very walls of our lodgings. Outside, the London fog thickened, wrapping the city in a shroud of mystery, as if the world itself held its breath for what was to come. Holmes stood by the window, his silhouette framed against the dim glow of gas lamps. His sharp profile etched with the focus of a man on the verge of revelation. I took my seat by the fire, notebook in hand, prepared to document the culmination of our latest inquiry case that had spiraled from a cryptic message about the clock striking 13 into a web of political intrigue and ancient secrets. Holmes turned from the window, his eyes alight with the unmistakable gleam of triumph. "Watson," he began, voice calm but charged with intensity, "the hour we awaited has come. The final piece of this intricate puzzle lies within the pages of Alistair Hornsby's journal and the truths it conceals about those who still wield power from the shadows." He gestured toward the open journal resting on the desk. Its yellowed pages filled with coded entries and cryptic references. Throughout this investigation, we have traversed the labyrinth of London's hidden history and masking, a cabal that shaped events from behind the curtain, influencing politics, wealth, and even justice itself. I nodded, remembering the faces of those we had encountered: the wary clockmaker, the secretive informants, the shadowy figures who moved unseen through the city's corridors of power. Holmes paced slowly, assembling his thoughts with the methodical precision of a master chess player. The Cabal, as described by Moresby, was driven by the pursuit of control, maintaining influence through manipulation and fear. Yet, like the serpent society before it, internal dissent and the courage of a few have begun to unravel their grasp. He paused, eyes piercing. Tonight, we shall confront their last stronghold, not with violence, but with the unassailable power of truth. We departed Baker Street in the cold embrace of night, moving swiftly toward an abandoned mansion near the Thames, once a grand estate, now a silent monument to faded glory. It was here, according to the journal, that the Cabal held their clandestine gatherings. The mansion's facade loomed in the darkness, its broken windows staring like vacant eyes. Holmes's footsteps were light but purposeful as we crossed the threshold, the air thick with dust and the whispers of long-forgotten secrets. Inside, silence was profound, disturbed only by the faint drip of water and the distant rumble of the river. Holmes led the way to a hidden chamber beneath the house, a room concealed by an intricate mechanism triggered by the turning of a clock's hands. Within, we found a gathering of figures cloaked in shadow, their faces obscured, but their tension palpable. Holmes stepped forward, his voice ringing clear. "Gentlemen and ladies, the era of concealment ends tonight. The shadows you hide in are dispelled by the light of knowledge." The figures stirred, some attempting flight, others reaching for concealed weapons, but Holmes raised a hand to halt them. "Resistance is futile. Your deeds are chronicled in this journal, your schemes laid bare. Justice, though slow, is certain." The tension broke as officers from Inspector Lestrade's contingent moved in, apprehending the conspirators without bloodshed. As the last figure was led away, Holmes turned to me with a rare softness. "Watson, this night marks a turning point, not an end, but a beginning. The truth has prevailed, but vigilance remains our constant companion." We emerged into the early dawn, the sky tinged with the first light of day. London exhaled, its ancient secrets momentarily laid to rest. Back at Baker Street, as I recorded the final details of the case, Holmes sat quietly, his fingers dancing once more over his violin strings, the melody of poignant farewell to the mystery now closed. "Tell me, Holmes," I said, "do you believe we have truly seen the last of the serpent and its ilk?" He smiled wryly, eyes twinkling with both humor and gravity. "Never, Watson. The game is eternal. As long as there is darkness to dispel and minds to deceive, there will be mysteries to solve and shadows to chase." He leaned back, his expression contemplative. "Yet, in each case, we illuminate a fragment of the greater whole. And it is in those fragments that humanity finds its hope." I closed my notebook, feeling the profound privilege of bearing witness to such relentless pursuit of justice and truth. The city outside stirred with life, oblivious to the battles fought in its hidden corners. But I knew, as long as Sherlock Holmes walked its streets, there would be light, however faint, in the deepest darkness. The clock struck one, and the game, as ever, was afoot.